This is The Big Breakdown, a long look back at some of the biggest stories we're covering for you at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
There's so many cases we cover where when you hear of the horrible deeds done by an individual, you wonder, what else have they done? If they're capable of all of this, what happened prior to this mountain of madness over here? And in the Brian Walsh case, if you already thought, wow, this is one giant heaping steam of pile of what, wait till you hear this. Wait till you hear the origin story. Wait till you hear more about what Brian Walsh did prior to the art fraud, prior to the murdering of his wife and dismembering of her, prior to stealing that loving, kind soul from his 3 children's tiny hands. What else is this narcissistic monster capable of? That's this story. Buckle up. And while we tell it, if you don't mind, I'd love to get your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube. If you're not already there, search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. And if you can, in the review section on Apple Podcasts, if you wouldn't mind, leave us a review. Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi is the name of the podcast. A few kind words would be greatly appreciated while you're listening to this. Thank you in advance. So let me take a sip of my coffee and we will begin. Dr. Thomas Walsh, he was a prominent neurologist at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. Yeah. Kind of physician who headed divisions and built a reputation over decades. He was also a man who, by the end of his life, had made one thing absolutely clear to everyone around him. His only son was not to receive a dime from his estate. When Thomas died unexpectedly in September of 2018, while traveling to India, his will left no room for interpretation. I hereby bequeath to Brian R. Walsh my best wishes, but nothing else from my estate. That's the father's final message to the son he hadn't spoken to in over a decade, according to court documents. Brian Walsh responded to that message by allegedly destroying the will and taking everything anyway. Because he's that type of dude. Yeah. This is real. This is, again, par for the course in a story where there's been so many chapters of, but wait, there's more. Oh, but wait, there's more. This is the Brian Walsh story that never made national headlines, the ones that played out in Plymouth County probate court years before Anna disappeared, before the hatchets and hacksaws entered the public record. If you want to understand who this man is, according to those who knew him longest, you don't start with New Year's Day 2023. You start right here. The estrangement between Thomas and Brian wasn't the result of a family disagreement or clash of values. According to court filings and statements from Thomas's closest friends, it was the result of theft on a scale that's hard to comprehend between a parent and child. In the early 2000s, Brian acquired a dilapidated house in Lenox, Massachusetts. Father and son struck a deal. Thomas would fund the renovations, reportedly investing over $500,000 into the property. When the house sold, Thomas would recoup his investment, and Brian would keep whatever profit remained. A straightforward arrangement. Generous, even. The kind of thing a father does when he's trying to help his adult child be an adult. The house was eventually refinanced. And on the night of the closing, according to a longtime family friend who spoke to the Boston Globe, Brian took the check. Estimates range from $800,000 to nearly $1 million, and disappeared. No repayment, no explanation. That phone call was the last time Thomas Walsh heard from his son for over 12 years, allegedly. Think about that for a moment. Not a loan gone bad, not a business partnership that fell apart. According to people in Thomas's inner circle, his own son allegedly stole a fortune from him and then cut off all contact. The friend who recounted the story put it simply: the day Brian took that check was the last time Thomas heard from him. The fallout went beyond money. Court documents filed in the probate case reveal a portrait of Brian Walsh that his father's friends had assembled over years of observation. Jeffrey Ornstein, one of Thomas's longtime friends, wrote in a signed statement that Brian had been a long-term patient at Austin Riggs Center, a psychiatric hospital in Berkshire. According to Ornstein, Brian was diagnosed there as a sociopath. And Thomas had told him this would never change. Another friend, Fred Pescatori, Fred Pescatori, offered an even more disturbing account. He described a trip to China that he took with Brian and Thomas years earlier. According to Pescatori's court filing, he watched Brian attempt to smuggle antiques out of the country. When guards confronted him about it, Brian allegedly grabbed a stanchion and tried to attack 4 or 5 of them. Pescatori didn't mince words in his assessment. Brian is not only a sociopath, but also a very angry and physically violent person. Ta-da! We're the aristocrats. That's why he did what he did and was able to do it. These aren't accusations from prosecutors in a murder trial. These are statements from people who knew the Walsh family for decades, submitted under oath in a probate dispute years before anyone heard the name Anna Walsh. Given all of this, the language Thomas used in his will makes sense. He drafted it in May of 2016 with 2 witnesses present. He acknowledged that he had only one child, Brian Reza Walsh, with whom I am not in contact. He appointed his nephew Andrew as executor, and he made certain there would be no ambiguity about his intentions. If Brian wasn't receiving anything, it was deliberate. Thomas told friends repeatedly over the years that his son had been cut out. One friend recalled Thomas explaining that reconciling with Brian would mean letting mayhem back into my life, and he wasn't willing to do that. Good for him. Good for him. You call these fuckers out and you leave them at the side of the road to rot. Because if you don't, this is what you get. You can't fix certain people. And sociopathy is one of them. You get that diagnosis, you're like, oh, fuck. Like, this is, it's a sociopath. At least that's the allegation. Then in September of 2018, Thomas died while traveling overseas. He was gone before anyone could prepare. And according to court documents, Brian moved with purpose, like predators and sociopaths do. Despite having had almost no contact with his father for over a decade, Brian reached out to Jeffrey Ornstein shortly after Thomas's death. He wanted keys to the whole house, said he needed some paperwork. Ornstein agreed to help. He went to the property, located the documents Brian had mentioned, and while inside, he noticed something sitting on the cabinet in Thomas's office: the will. Ornstein read it. He saw the list of beneficiaries. He saw that Brian had been explicitly disinherited. And then Ornstein did something that would eventually derail Brian's entire scheme. He photographed the will with his cell phone. But he didn't tell Brian what he'd found. He felt sorry for him. He left a set of keys under the mat and went home, keeping what he knew to himself. That photograph would become the only surviving evidence of Thomas Walsh's final wishes, because 3 months later, in December of 2018, Brian appeared in Plymouth County probate court. He told the judge his father had died without a will. No other family members had been notified of Thomas's death. Brian had kept the information to himself. The court, unaware of what Thomas's friends knew, appointed Brian as personal representative of this estate. With that authority, he had legal control over everything his father had owned. And according to court filings from family members and friends, he immediately began converting that control into cash. The liquidation, as described in probate documents, was methodical. Brian allegedly drained at least $250,000 from his father's bank accounts. He sold artwork that Thomas had collected, an original Salvador Dali. He sold Oriental rugs, Murano glass, Asian antiques, pottery. He sold his father's car. He put the waterfront house in Hull under contract, reportedly weeks away from closing. By the time anyone realized what was happening, according to his cousin Andrew, Brian had already removed valuables from the property and was positioning himself to walk away with everything. Andrew Walsh, the nephew Thomas had actually designated as the executor, eventually learned his uncle had died. He found out through Thomas's friends, not through Brian. What he discovered next was worse. His cousin had seized control of the estate, claimed there was no will, and was systematically dismantling everything Thomas had left behind. In July of 2019, Andrew petitioned the court to remove Brian as personal representative. His filing was direct. It is clear that Brian destroyed the last will and testament, which excluded him from any inheritance when he gained access to the Hull property. Andrew also noted that Brian had isolated himself from the entire extended family, and the reason was obvious to everyone. They all knew what he had done to his father years earlier. Brian, of course, in his sociopathic way, contested the claim. He submitted his own affidavit, painting a completely different picture. He wrote that he and his father had actually reconciled in March of 2017, that they'd spoken candidly for the first time since a family therapy session in 1996. He claimed Thomas had been planning to move in with him and Anna as he aged. He suggested that his father couldn't have written the 2016 will because of a stroke he'd suffered years earlier. He even floated the possibility that Thomas's signature was forged. Prosecutors' response, filed with the court, was unequivocal. Brian's account was a pack of lies. The court ultimately accepted the photographic evidence of the will. Andrew was named personal representative, but the damage had already been done. According to filings, Brian had extracted over $500,000 in assets from the estate before he was removed, $250,000 from bank accounts, another $250,000 in sold possessions. Andrew spent months attempting to force Brian to provide an accounting of where the money went. Those efforts went nowhere, and by the fall of 2023, Andrew abandoned the pursuit entirely. There was no point in continuing. Brian was sitting in a jail cell awaiting trial for the murder of his wife. What makes this story essential to understanding the Anna Walsh case isn't just that it reveals a pattern. It's that the pattern is so consistent it feels almost mechanical. 1 month after his father died in October of 2018, Brian was indicted by federal prosecutors on wire fraud charges. He'd sold 2 fake Andy Warhol paintings to a gallery owner in Los Angeles, convincing a seasoned art dealer that the works were authentic pieces from Warhol's Shadows series. The dealer, Ron Rivlin, later described being conned by Brian as an Oscar-winning performance. Brian pled guilty in 2021. He owed then nearly $500,000 in restitution. The fraud had involved stealing the original paintings from a friend in South Korea, commissioning forgeries, and then deceiving buyers across multiple countries. By the time Anna Walsh disappeared on New Year's Day 2023, the man at the center of the investigation had already demonstrated, according to court records, an established methodology. Allegedly steal from a friend overseas, allegedly steal from your own father, manipulate legal systems, destroy evidence, lie under oath. Prosecutors now allege he killed his wife, a woman who carried a $2.7 million life insurance policy with Brian as the sole beneficiary. Days after discovering she'd been having an affair. The financial pressure was real. He owed restitution he couldn't pay, and his wife was worth more dead than their marriage was worth intact. Thomas Walsh's friends saw this coming in their own way. One of them wrote in a probate filing years before Anna vanished, Brian was and is only interested in getting his father's money. That wasn't speculation. That was the conclusion of people who had watched him operate for decades. The probate case never resulted in criminal charges. Brian was never prosecuted for allegedly destroying his father's will or looting the estate. The legal system treated it as a civil matter, a family dispute over inheritance. Andrew Walsh eventually recovered control of what remained, but the assets Brian had already liquidated were gone. No restitution, no accountability, just a quiet resolution in a courthouse that had no idea the man at the center of the case would soon be accused of something far worse. Dr. Thomas Walsh spent the last years of his life trying to protect what he'd built from a son he no longer trusted. He documented his wishes. He had the will witnessed. He told his friends repeatedly that Brian was receiving nothing, and according to court records, none of it mattered. Brian allegedly walked into that house in Hull, found the document that disinherited him, and made it disappear. He then presented himself to the court as a grieving son, entitled to his father's legacy. He sold the art. He drained the accounts. He nearly sold the house itself. The jury deliberating Anna Walsh's murder is weighing evidence about hatchets and DNA and Google searches about body disposal, or they were. But the behavioral blueprint was established long before any of that. According to those who knew him best and who submitted their observations under penalty of perjury, Brian Walsh is someone who takes what he wants, destroys what stands in his way, and constructs whatever narrative serves his interests. His father tried to stop him with legal documents in clear language, and it was not enough. The people closest to Thomas knew exactly who Brian was. They warned the court. They provided photographs and testimony, and still by the time anyone intervened, Brian had already taken what he had came for. His father's final words to him were, "Best wishes, but nothing else," according to court documents. Brian's response was to erase those words entirely and to help himself to everything. People are scary. People are scary. This is what a narcissist, a sociopath, anything in the dark triad of personality disorders is 1,000% fully capable of. If you have someone like this in your life and they haven't acted out in such an extreme way yet, but you can put the pieces together knowing full damn well that that person operates like this, operates in their own self-interest and only their self-interest, well, it's not a crazy thing to think they could be capable of things like this. Unfortunately, healthy minds, ones that don't have personality disorders to this degree, we don't operate that way. You try to see the best in people. You try to have grace. You try to have mercy. Well, maybe they'll see it this way. Maybe they'll come around. They won't. They won't. Because in the end, narcissism always wins. Not the narcissist. Brian's going to be spending the rest of his life in prison for the murder of his wife. And if it wasn't going to be for the murder of his wife, something else would have put him there. But it wins. They lose. But the act, it's almost like a disease, narcissism. So insidious, so destructive. It takes over the brain and allows it to almost, it's like evil incarnate. A lot of times we talk about evil people, and we're really just talking about malignant narcissists. A brain that's so self-serving that it's capable of this kind of madness. They know no limits. Yeah. Your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. If you're not already there, search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Would love to get your thoughts, your feedback. Maybe you have a story of a narcissist in your life. I'd love to hear it. We do try to read those comments. We do read them. I try to respond to as many as we can, but we get thousands every day. So, but just know we do pay attention and we do read them. So I'd love to get your thoughts there on YouTube. And if you don't mind, if you have a moment, Apple Podcasts, if you would leave us a review there, that helps us out tremendously in those rankings. Lets other folks know that we exist. So thank you in advance for that. Greatly, greatly appreciated. Until next time, my name's Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
Brian Walsh is going to die in prison. 6 hours. That's all it took for 12 jurors in Dedham, Massachusetts to look at the evidence, look at the timeline, look at the Google searches on a child's iPad and decide that Brian Walsh murdered his wife Anna on New Year's Day 2023. First-degree murder, premeditated, deliberate, life without the possibility of parole. And here's what makes this case extraordinary. They did it without a body. Anna Walsh has never been found. Not a bone, not a tooth, not a single identifiable remain. Norfolk County District Attorney Michael Morrissey said this is the first time in his memory that his office has secured a first-degree murder conviction without recovering the victim's body. Brian Walsh disposed of his wife so thoroughly, so methodically, that all investigators ever pulled from those dumpsters were blood-soaked carpet fragments and a broken piece of her Gucci necklace, her hunter boots, and her COVID-19 vaccination card. That's what's left of Anna Walsh's physical existence on this earth. A vaccination card in a trash bag behind her mother-in-law's apartment complex. We're going to go through what the jury has found and what's going to be happening next here in this case. While we do, if you don't mind, please press subscribe wherever it is you're listening to us. If it's on Apple Podcasts, if you don't mind, leave us a review there. We would greatly appreciate that. And YouTube, please join us on YouTube and comment. We'd love to get your thoughts on this case there. Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi is what you can search on either platform to find us. Okay, so the jury saw what we've been talking about for weeks now. The digital evidence, the surveillance footage, the forensic trail that Brian Walsh left behind while apparently believing he was smart enough to get away with it. This is the man who on January 1st of 23, hours after allegedly killing his wife while their 3 children slept in the house, used his son's iPad to Google best ways to dispose of a body. How long for someone to be missing to inherit, and hacksaw, best tool for dismemberment. He searched whether a dishwasher could clean blood off a knife. He searched how to remove DNA. He did this on a device that synced to the cloud. Then he drove to Lowe's. Surveillance cameras caught him walking through the aisles on New Year's Day, purchasing $462 worth of supplies, a hacksaw, a utility knife, a hammer, snips, a Tyvek suit, shoe guards, rags, cleaning supplies, paid in cash, because of course he did. But he forgot about the cameras. He forgot about the receipts. He forgot that every dumpster he visited in the days that followed was going to become a crime scene. Investigators found blood in the basement of the Walsh home. They found a bloody knife. They found Anna's DNA on the hacksaw pulled from the trash. They found adult gray slippers with blood and hair matted to the bottom. DNA from both Anna and Brian. They found a bathrobe, bloody white towels, pieces of carpet with a blood clot, and a fragment of Anna's necklace embedded in the fibers. The prosecution's theory was simple. Brian Walsh killed his wife, cut her apart, and threw her away like garbage. The evidence backed that up at every turn. The defense tried something. I'll give them that. Attorney Larry Tipton stood up in that courtroom and offered the jury an alternate reality, sudden unexplained death. That was the play. Brian Walsh woke up on New Year's morning, found his healthy 39-year-old wife inexplicably dead in their bed, and then in a state of panic decided the appropriate response was to dismember her body and distribute her remains across multiple dumpsters in eastern Massachusetts. He didn't call 911. He didn't call a doctor. He didn't call anyone. He went to Lowe's. Tipton told the jury there was no evidence of premeditation, no evidence Brian knew about Hannah's affair, no motive. He said Brian loved Anna. He said the Google searches about murder and dismemberment came after she was already dead, born from disbelief rather than planning. He urged jurors to consider whether it was even possible for one man to clean a crime scene so thoroughly that almost no trace remained. But here's the defense, what they didn't do. They didn't call a single witness, not one. They arrested without presenting any testimony. And Brian Walsh himself, who reportedly told the judge on Thursday of last week that he planned to testify, never took the stand. When the moment came, he declined, which means the jury never heard his version of events from his own mouth. They never got to ask him why. If his wife died of natural causes, his first instinct was to bury a hacksaw or to buy a hacksaw. The defense asked the jury to believe something unbelievable and offered nothing to support it. The prosecution's motive theory was brutal in its simplicity. Anna Walsh had $2.7 million in life insurance policies. Brian was the sole beneficiary. The marriage was falling apart. Anna was having an affair with a realtor in Washington, D.C., where she worked for Tishman Speyer. She was commuting back and forth away from her 3 young children for weeks at a time, and testimony revealed she was exhausted and frustrated. Her friend Alyssa Kirby told the jury that Anna was at a breaking point. Anna had given Brian an ultimatum about his federal art fraud case. She was preparing to move the kids to D.C. permanently, setting up their rooms, making plans for a life without him. Meanwhile, Brian was stuck. House arrest in Cohasset while awaiting sentencing for selling fake Andy Warhol paintings. He owed $475,000 in restitution. He couldn't leave Massachusetts. His mother had hired a private investigator to follow Anna in D.C. The defense claimed Brian didn't know about it, but prosecutors painted a picture of a man who suspected his wife was slipping away and decided to do something about it. He needed her dead. Prosecutor Anna Walshe told the jury in closing arguments, this was a marriage in crisis. The last person besides Brian to see Anna alive was Jem Matulu, a family friend who joined the couple for New Year's Eve dinner. He left around 1 a.m. The champagne was flowing. Anna had signed the outside of a champagne box with the words, "Let's make 2023 the best one yet." By morning, according to prosecutors, she was dead. By the afternoon, her husband was out shopping for tools to cut her apart. Brian told police she'd left for work, an emergency in D.C., said she took a rideshare to Logan Airport around 6 a.m. No Uber or Lyft record exists for that trip because it never happened. Anna's phone pinged near the Walsh home at 3 a.m. on January 2nd. She never contacted her employer. She never contacted her affair partner. She never contacted anyone. Her employer reported her missing on January 4th after Brian called them asking if they'd seen her. He was arrested 4 days later. The conviction today carries a mandatory sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. That happens Wednesday. Brian Walsh will also be sentenced for the 2 charges he pled guilty to before the trial: misleading police and improper disposal of a body. That's up to 20 years on the misleading charge, enhanced because of the murder conviction, and up to 3 years for the body disposal. I know, only 3 for body disposal. He's already serving 37 months on the federal art fraud case, running concurrently. The man is never getting out. When the verdict was read, Brian Walsh showed no reaction. He just sat there with that dopey face. Sat there while the foreperson said the word guilty. Each of the 12 jurors was polled individually, each one confirmed. His mother, Diana, who'd been in the front row every single day of the trial, got up and left the courtroom without speaking to anyone. His attorneys, Larry Tipton and Kelly Porges, declined to comment. Court officers put Walsh back in handcuffs and shackles and walked him out to the waiting van from the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office. He didn't respond when reporters shouted questions. Anna Walsh's sister released a statement through the DA's office. 4 words: justice has been served. Morrissey agreed. He praised the investigators who spent weeks combing through dumpsters and landfills and transfer stations, who pulled surveillance footage from Lowe's and Home Depot and CVS, who pieced together a murder case without a body. They left no stone unturned, he said. It's not about winning or losing. It's about getting the right answer, and this was the right answer. Here's what stays with me about this case. 3 children were in that house when their mother was killed. They were 2, 4, and 6. They've been in state custody since January 23. Their mother is gone. Not just dead, but erased, thrown into dumpsters, shredded, incinerated, with the rest of the trash before investigators could get there. Their father is going to prison forever. Whatever family photos exist, whatever memories they might have of New Year's Eve 2022, of their mother signing a champagne box and hoping for a better year, that's what they have left. That and the knowledge of what Dad did. Brian Walsh thought he could outsmart everyone. He thought he could Google his way through a murder, buy his supplies in cash, spread the evidence across enough dumpsters that nobody would ever put it together. He thought wrong. The digital trail was right there. The surveillance footage was right there. The DNA was right there on a hacksaw in a trash bag waiting for investigators to find it. Like I said, sentencing is Wednesday. Victim impact statements will be read, and his family will finally get to say what they've been holding on to for nearly 3 years. And then Brian Walsh will be taken away to serve a sentence that has no end date. Life without parole. No appeals likely to change that. No possibility of walking free. Anna Walsh deserved better than what happened to her. She deserved to see her children grow up. She deserved to figure out her marriage or end it on her own terms. She deserved a future that didn't end in a basement in Cohasset on New Year's Day. She didn't get any of that. But today, at least, the system said her life mattered. The system said her death would be answered for. The system said guilty. And somewhere out there in a landfill that's already been searched and searched again, what remains of Anna Walsh is still waiting. Her body was never found, but justice found her anyway. Give me your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube if you're not already there. Search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. I'd love to get your thoughts on this heartbreaking case. Until next time, my name is Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.